Hi everyone, and welcome back to Learn Neuroradiology. Today we're going to talk about a topic that people have asked to see about. They want to see about how they should approach an MRI of the cervical spine and what a search pattern for that might be. So we're going to spend some time talking about that a little bit today. At this point, I'd just like to point out, if you haven't taken the time to watch some of the videos on basic spine imaging, you might go back and take a look at those if you haven't seen those, or if you're completely unfamiliar with spine imaging. It may be helpful before you take a look at this video. When you're doing an MRI of the cervical spine, there are a couple of reasons that you might do them. One is neck pain, either from trauma or degenerative disease, with degenerative disease being by far the most common. Radicular symptoms such as pain or paresthesias in the shoulders and arms is another reason. Myelopathy or general weakness, motor symptoms and trouble walking, so you can have lower extremity symptoms from cord compression, or metastatic disease, and these are the main reasons you might be doing an MRI of the cervical spine. One question that comes up often is, should an MRI of the cervical spine use contrast? There are a few indications where you should routinely do it, those being metastatic disease, evaluation for demyelinating disease, recent surgery, and so for us, I use a definition of around in the last 6 months, or if there's concern for infection. Degenerative disease, pain, trauma, almost everything else, the answer is no. And within that, about 90% of exams of the cervical spine should not have contrast. Now, two key points when you're looking at an MRI of the cervical spine is sagittal imaging is really key, and then use your axial T2 to look at the individual levels. So the general pattern that you want to follow is listed here. You want to first start by looking at the alignment of the vertebral bodies. Look at the vertebral bodies themselves and their individual height. Look at the marrow signal, so what the bone marrow looks like, if there's anything replacing it, what the vertebral discs look like, and what the spinal cord and canal looks like. Take a glance at the surrounding soft tissues, and then typically I save this for the end. I go through and look at the individual levels to look for degenerative disease and any narrowing of the neural foramina or spinal canal. So starting here now, we're going to go through each of these separately. So the first thing you want to look at is the alignment of the cervical spine. So to do that, I typically use the sagittal T1 and T2 images, and you should really have 3 columns that are in alignment. And I'm going to show you the 3 kind of main structures you want to look at here. The anterior longitudinal ligament is the ligament that runs along the anterior portion of the cervical spine here, and that should make a nice straight curve. Here you have the PLL, or the posterior longitudinal ligament. That should also make a nice straight curve along the posterior margin of the vertebral bodies. And the ligamentum flavum should be nicely lined up in a similar curve along the posterior aspect of the spinal canal here, along the anterior part of the posterior elements. Here you can see the spinous processes, and those should all be in alignment. So now let's take a look at some real-time images here. So here I've pulled up a sagittal T1 and T2 weighted images of a cervical spine. Here is where I usually will look at the alignment. You want the ALL to be nicely aligned here. You want the PLL to have a nice smooth curvature where there's no step-offs or anything. And you want the ligamentum flavum to have a nice similar curvature here. So this is a T1 weighted image on the left here, and we have a T2 weighted image on the right. Again, you can see all of those structures are lined up here. There's no step off from one vertebral body to the next. And so you want those to all be lined up like that. Now it's typical for the cervical spine to have a little bit of lordotic curvature, so a little bit of a curvature like this, which you can see in this patient. So this patient has normal alignment. So the next part of our general pattern is to look at the vertebral bodies. Again, we want to use the sagittal T1 and T2 weighted images. We want to look at the vertebral bodies, make sure they have a normal height. So all of the vertebral bodies should have approximately the same height as you go from one to the next. And you want to take a look for any destructive bone lesions, so any areas where the marrow is abnormal or any areas where the cortex has been destroyed. So here again, I've brought up the sagittal T1 and T2 weighted images. We want to take a look at these vertebral bodies. Here you can see the dens, so this is C2, and you want to look at the vertebral bodies. You want to see a nice outline of cortex around each one. Each vertebral body should be roughly rectangular in shape, and each vertebral body should have approximately the same height as the vertebral body adjacent to it. So you don't want to see one that's half as tall as any of the others. The end plates should be generally pretty straight or maybe just mildly concave, but in general, that should be their configuration. And you might have a little bit of increase in height as you get to the thoracic junction here. So they're going to be a little bit taller in the thoracic spine. But otherwise, you want to make sure you don't see any that have lost height or anything that's destroying any of those areas of cortex. You can check in on both your T1 and your T2 weighted images here. So just take a quick look through those. You want to look at the facets and make sure the facets are all generally in alignment and none of those facets are destroyed. And you can also take a quick look at the spinous processes themselves. You don't want to see any destructive lesions in those spinous processes. So this again is normal. Next in our pattern is to take a look at the marrow signal. Now for looking at the marrow signal, your best sequence is going to be your T1 weighted images. That's because the marrow typically has a lot of fat and the fat shows up really nicely. The other sequence you want to use is your T2 fat saturated or stir sequence, because by suppressing out the fat, you'll be able to see things that are not fat within the marrow. Here I've pulled up the sagittal T1 weighted image on the left here and the sagittal T2 or T2 fat sat, or in this case, this is a stir. What you can see is when you look at the marrow on T1 weighted imaging, you want the marrow to be brighter than the adjacent disc spaces. So here you can see, again, the marrow is brighter than the disc, and that's true for all of these vertebral bodies. If you look at the marrow in the calvarium, similarly, you see that it's bright, and the clivus here as well, like you see it's brighter than the adjacent disc. You want to look for any areas of heterogeneity. So here you see in the inferior part of C2, you see there's a little area of kind of focal brightness there, but if you look at the corresponding area on the stir image, there's really nothing there. This is probably just an area of focal fat, or perhaps a little venous malformation or hemangioma. Similarly, if you come down here and look at this vertebral body, if you look adjacent to the end plate, you see some areas that are a little T1 hyperintense around the end plate. That's just a little focal fat around the end plate, again, because you don't see it at all on the stir image here. Now there's another little focal area in the C5 vertebral body. It's a little bit low on T1. You have to look out a little bit more for those. It's a little bit bright on the stir image here. Sometimes you'll just have areas of heterogeneous marrow or focal marrow there. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. This is within normal, but these are the kind of things you want to look for. Similarly, in the upper thoracic spine, you see an area that's T1 hyperintense here, but suppresses fully. You don't see anything on the stir, so it's nothing really to worry about there. The next thing you want to take a look at is the vertebral discs, or the intervertebral discs. The T2 weighted images are your best way to look at the discs themselves, or at least get an overview of the discs. They should be brighter than the adjacent marrow. They should be roughly of uniform height, and you should be able to differentiate the nucleus, or the central part of the disc, from the outer darker annulus. So here I've pulled up the sagittal T2 on the left here and the sagittal stir on the right. We're going to take a look at the discs here. So the discs are these intermediate to dark structures in between the vertebral bodies. What you'll see is the central portion of the disc here has greater water signal. That's the internucleus pulposus of the disc, whereas the outer part of the disc, or the annulus, is a little bit darker because it has less water content. That central portion of the disc should be roughly equal to or brighter than the marrow itself. If you see, you can see the sort of central bright areas a little bit better on stir because you're suppressing that surrounding fat. But those should be relatively bright. You want to also see a relatively uniform height as you go from the top of the cervical spine all the way down through the upper thoracic spine. The height of the disc should be roughly the same. As you have degeneration of the disc, that height will decrease and those bones will become closer together. But you see these are relatively normal discs here. The next thing I'd like for you to take a look at is the spinal cord and canal. The sagittal T2 and the axial T2 are the best ways to look at this. What you want to see is CSF around the cord at all levels, and you want to see uniform cord signal, so you don't want to see patchy areas of cord signal abnormality. Here I've pulled up the sagittal T2 weighted image here, and I've got the axial T2 on the right. What you can see is if you look at the spinal canal, what you want to see is a nice sharp line of CSF anterior to the spinal cord. You want to see a nice amount of CSF posterior to the spinal cord, or here. And you want to be able to scroll through that spinal cord and see a relatively homogeneous dark signal there. Now you're going to see some patchy areas that are essentially just noise or mapping of the fluid signal into the spinal cord, but we don't want to see any areas of focal patchy abnormality. If we do see areas that we think are abnormal, what we want to do is take the axials and take a look through. And so we can scroll through our spinal cord here. We want to keep an eye on the spinal cord itself, and again, the CSF around it. And what we'll see is that the spinal cord signal is relatively uniform. You'll see different areas, or you'll see the cellular tracks in the center. You'll see the white matter tracks around the periphery, so that you can see a little heterogeneity in the cord itself, but you don't want to see any patchy abnormalities. And this again is relatively normal. On some of the images, you see a little bit more of the internal cellular architecture there. You see the horns, the anterior and posterior horns there. You can see them just a little bit, but not too well. And you don't want to see any areas that are really too T2 bright. Again, to say that something is T2 abnormal within the cord, you really need to see it on both projections. Now for a second, I'm going to switch back to the STIR image, which I'm now showing on the right. I'm just going to show you that when you look at the cord signal on STIR, as compared to T2, the cord looks much more heterogeneous. STIR and fat-suppressed images are much more susceptible to noise and artifacts within the cord. It can become relatively challenging to distinguish small areas. So when you're doing something like looking for MS lesions within the canal, you definitely want to try to focus on your pure T2 and not use the fat-saturated images because they're so much more prone to artifact. While you're looking at the spinal cord, you may also take a look at your gradient echo. And so this is a gradient echo axial that you have on the right here. This is going to be more prone to showing things that have susceptibility effect. So things like blood or calcium, you'll often see them in studies that are done for trauma. And what can help you is to look for areas of contusion or hematoma within the spinal canal. So you take a look at the spinal cord here, see if there are any areas of abnormal susceptibility. Again, you see a little bit of that horn architecture within the spinal cord itself, but we don't see any areas of abnormal dark signal there, which could be blood or calcium, so we don't see any of that. Next, we'll move on to the soft tissues. Before you spend too much time focusing on the individual levels, you want to take a look at the soft tissues that are around the spinal cord and spinal canal. I think the sagittal T2 and axial T2 are really the best way to look at those. You want to focus on looking at the airway, the thyroid, and vessels. Definitely also take a look for any adjacent lymph nodes. Now this is going to be your chance to look at anything that's outside of the vertebral bodies and spinal canal itself. Now I'll draw your attention to a few things on this study because they are not normal. You'll see there's some layering fluid in the sphenoid sinus up here. And so you'll definitely see that. You want to take some time. You want to look at the brainstem and cerebellum here. Make sure you're not seeing anything abnormal there. And you want to take a look at the soft tissues surrounding the spine. Here you catch a little bit of the carotid bifurcation there. You want to take a look here. The other thing that's not normal in this case is you'll see a tube. And so this is looks like an enteric tube here that's coming in through the nose and actually going down here, so you kind of catch that. You see that, so you want to keep an eye on things like that. Then come to your axials and take a look through your axials. Again, you'll see a few things that are abnormal here in this intubated patient. You see some fluid in the mastoids, so those mastoids are too bright. Got some fluid abnormality there, which can be typical in an intubated patient. But as you come down, then there are a few things you want to check out here. You want to check out the vessels, and so here you can see the carotid artery on the left and vertebral artery. Similarly, we have the carotid on the right and the right vertebral artery there. So as you come down, you want to keep an eye on those things. Here you see the endotracheal and enteric tube. Here you see the vessels, so keep an eye on those. You want to look for any abnormal lymph nodes in the internal jugular chains here. Here's a jugular vein on this side and a jugular vein on that side as well. As you come down, just be looking for any masses, any abnormal structures there. You want to keep a look at the thyroid, is usually in this area. You can see it's covered by the saturation band here, so you can't really see anything. Occasionally, you'll also see a little bit of the lung apices, so you want to check and make sure there aren't any masses or effusions or anything there. Once you've finished all of these other things, you're going to want to take a look at the individual levels, and especially in patients with degenerative disease, the individual levels you're going to spend a lot of time focusing on. I tend to use both the sagittal T2 and axial T2 together. And as you go through the levels, essentially the spinal canal and neural foramen is going to get rated at each level. And you want to be able to call it normal, mild, moderate, or severe in terms of whether there's narrowing and degenerative changes. Now, we're not going to focus on differentiating those that much today, but I'm going to show you where to look. And that really takes a lot of experience to get used to what constitutes these different degrees of narrowing. So here I have the sagittal T2 and axial T2 images up again. And what I typically do is I take my axial T2s and I scroll down from the top, taking a look at the individual structures. So here you can see the top of the dens. This is the articular pillars of C1 here. And as you come down, what you're going to see is the base of C2 here. And then you're going to want to start looking at the neural foramina. And so here you can see this localizer line shows us we're just above the level of the C2, C3 disc here. What we see here is a spinal canal. The spinal canal should be separated by fluid from the surrounding structures. You should see it completely all the way around. Here's your neural foramina. You see a neural foramina on the left here and on the right. And so those are widely open. As you go down, then you're going to do that for each level. So here we are at the level of C3, C4. Again, the canal is open. There's not much of a disc, and that neural foramen is widely patent. You can see a little bit of the rootlet coming out to form the exiting nerve root there. Now you can also sometimes take your sagittals and scroll out a little bit to the side, and you can see the neural foramen where the nerve root is exiting, but it's much harder to see on the cervical spine than it is on the lumbar spine, just because of the angle. Here again, you see the nerve root, little dorsal ganglion there coming out, surrounded by fat. So you can see that there. And what you're going to do is you're going to go down and continue to scroll through. And you see here at 4-5, this is not entirely normal. You've got a normal neural foramen over here, relatively normal, but you're starting to get some degenerative changes on the left here, a little bit of an osteophyte in the neural foramen there, a little bit of facet hypertrophy. There's probably some mild narrowing there. This canal continues to be patent. And as you go down, each of these you're going to give a rating. And so again, so if we stop here, this is C5, C6. And again, you're starting to see a little bit of an osteophyte forming there, a little bit of an osteophyte, a little bit of facet degeneration, and a little bit of mild narrowing on both sides, although the canal remains patent. And so it's going to take some time practicing to figure out what constitutes mild, moderate, or severe narrowing. And we'll talk about that in a different video at some other point. Here we are at the level just below. Again, everything is patent here. So these would essentially be called normal for the majority of these levels. Here we are sort of at the final cervical level. Again, the spinal canal is patent. Lots of CSF around the spinal cord and normal neural foramina here. So these are the images that I think are the most useful for that. You want to check quickly the upper thoracic spine, but typically the upper thoracic spine is relatively normal, even in patients that have a lot of degenerative changes. So that brings us to the end of this video. In summary, when you're looking at an MR of the cervical spine, what you want to do is work through kind of your key pattern of the things that you look at. You want to look at the alignment, you want to look at the vertebral bodies, and kind of all of those things. Use the optimal sequences to look at each one. So when you're looking at a sequence, you want to have a specific goal of what you're looking at for that sequence as you work your way through. And as you practice, you'll get more accustomed to kind of toggling through those and looking at all those different features. I want to say thanks to everyone for watching the video today. If you haven't checked out the previous video on the basics of spine imaging, you might check out that video. Be sure to check out the other videos on our channel and be sure to subscribe as well. Thank you.